Welcome to Early Exchange with Vivian Oguche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruwoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Sustain that industry. So if government does not have much money, they should find an enabling environment.
Now, what are these issues? The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Hello and welcome to Early Exchange, where we shape policy and advance development when it comes to issues related to business, finance, and the economy. I am Femi Ayodele. Today is a special day. Today is World Teachers Day, a day dedicated by UNESCO to celebrate teachers all around the world. I want to use this opportunity to salute all teachers out there who are doing their very best to ensure there's proper growth and development when it comes to the education sector. And today is dedicated for you. Our discussion is going to be tailored towards the interest of teachers. We're going to look at the plight of teachers. We're going to look at the state of the educational system in Nigeria. And as you do this and looking at many other issues in the next 3 hours, we hope to make your day worthwhile. It is Early Exchange, and it's now time for news updates. Blessing is standard by to take us all around the world with news update. Blessing, good morning, and how are you today?
I'm very well, Femi. Good morning. Happy Teachers Day to all our esteemed teachers. We say thank you for the work that you do. Welcome to the morning news updates. I am Blessing H. We'll begin looking at the stories after this quick break. Stay tuned. Thanks for being there. In order to enhance the capital for small business owners and support business expansion, the federal government is initiating a non-interest loan program of 50,000 naira for 1.5 million market women through the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program. Nigeria's Minister of Women Affairs, Beta Edu, disclosed this during an advocacy visit to the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, in Abuja. According to her, the 75 billion naira Iyaloja fund dedicated to underprivileged female traders is slated for inauguration on October 17th, with the program unfolding in 3 phases, benefiting 500,000 individuals in the initial phase. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, RMAFC, Alhaji Mohammed Shehu, has stressed the importance of tax compliance in Nigeria to enhance revenue generation for the country. In an interview with newsmen in Abuja, Shehu called on both individuals and entities, including ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs, as well as private businesses, to ensure timely remittance of taxes to the federal government to avoid potential sanctions. He emphasized that the revenue generated from tax payments would play a crucial role in funding improved public services and infrastructure development across the nation, ultimately benefiting all citizens. She also underlined the pressing need to broaden Nigeria's tax base, pointing out that currently less than 40 million Nigerians are actively paying taxes, and that this figure is notably low for a country with a significantly large population. In another development, in the bid to safeguard the pension scheme's stability, the House of Representatives has initiated measures to tackle the 10 trillion naira loan borrowed by the federal government from pension funds. A motion was passed by the House directing its Committee on Pensions to investigate the current status of pension fund assets totaling over 15.5 trillion naira. Honorable Aliyu Bapa Miso from Bauchi presented the motion, stressing the vital role of retirement saving account RSAs in retirees' financial well-being. The motion also shed light on the loaning of 65% of pension funds, amounting to 10 trillion naira, to the federal government as investments. This move raised concerns about potential repayment delays and exposing contributors to unnecessary risks. The Nigerian Immigration Service (NIS) says it has successfully cleared the backlog of over 200,000 pending passport applications, marking a significant milestone in passport processing. Deputy Controller of Immigration and Immigration Spokesman Dotun Aridegbe announced this and noted that the action was in response to a directive from Dr. Olubunmi Tunjioju, the Minister of Interior, who urged the agency to clear the backlog within 2 weeks to improve the passport application process. While speaking with newsmen, Acting Controller General of NIS, Caroline Adikboju, and Yinka Fisher, Managing Director of Iris Smart Technologies, responsible for passport booklet production, they both reaffirmed their commitment to simplify the passport acquisition process and ensure prompt issuance of Nigerian passports. Moving now to other stories from Nigeria, the Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency, NASDA, Dr. Alilu Shaba, says Nigeria is set to become a satellite launch hub for other nations, and that the country has the capacity to generate annual revenue amounting to $400 million. It disclosed this at a media interview and noted that the realization of this vision hinges on the development of Nigeria's Assembly, Integration and Testing Lab, AITL, which is a critical component of the country's 25-year space policy roadmap. According to him, launching satellites from Nigerian territory is a key step toward advancing space science and technology within the nation. While stressing the nation's uniqueness in geographical location, Dr. Shaba acknowledged the substantial cost associated with this project and the importance of involving local investors. He envisioned Nigeria serving as a launch site for approximately 20 satellites annually, potentially generating around $400 million in revenue from these satellite launch activities. Relief may have come to the people of Osun State as a Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) has been signed between a Chinese firm, China Overseas Energy Development Technology Limited, and Ooni of Ife, Oba Adeyeye Enitan Ogunwusi Ojaja II in Osun State. The MOU focuses on agricultural investment, green energy initiatives, and mineral exploration in the region, with the goal of creating approximately 50,000 job opportunities. Now, during the announcement of this partnership, it was revealed that the initial phase would concentrate on establishing a cocoa processing plant in the area, which will serve as an agricultural hub. Additionally, plans were unveiled to transition to 100% solar power for a prominent local institution within 30 to 60 days upon project completion. Before we turn to other parts of the globe, let's go on another break. Just stay tuned. Now let's move to the rest of Africa. Ethiopia and the European Union (EU) have signed a cooperation agreement worth 650 million euros package to be used to help Ethiopia recover from war and to support economic reforms. This is the first major aid package from the EU to Ethiopia since the war in Tigray ended last year. The aid is a sign that the EU is committed to helping Ethiopia rebuild and move forward. However, EU has made it clear that it will not provide direct budgetary support to the Ethiopian government until certain political conditions are met. These conditions include progress on peace talks and human rights accountability. This aid package is a positive development for Ethiopia, as it shows that the international community is willing to help the country recover from the war and build a better future. Now to the Middle East. As part of its efforts to position the United Arab Emirates UAE as a global hub for the oil and gas sector, the CEO of the Arab Development Establishment article has revealed ongoing discussions with several international oil and gas companies to establish joint ventures aimed at enhancing Abu Dhabi's industrial capabilities. Speaking during the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference ADPEC 2023, the CEO emphasized Adeko's commitment to fortify the nation's oil and gas industry. He further emphasized that Adeko currently represents over 200 international firms specializing in gas, oil field services and energy sectors. His Highness Sheikh Maktoum bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, first Deputy Ruler of Dubai, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance for the United Arab Emirates, has affirmed Dubai's commitment to fostering a comprehensive ecosystem that supports the growth and sustainability of family businesses. This initiative aligns with the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai, to double Dubai's economy over the next decade, positioning the Emirate among the world's top 3 cities in terms of economic impact. His Highness Sheikh Maktoum made these remarks during the launch of the Dubai Family Business Management Program, a project initiated by the Dubai Center for Family Businesses in partnership with the Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Leadership Development. The Dubai Family Business Management Program aims to empower and develop the management skills of second-tier leaders within family businesses. Netflix has announced the discontinuation of its free service in Kenya effective from November 1st as part of its revenue-boosting strategy amidst escalating market competition. In 2021, Netflix introduced a free plan in Kenya, granting users access to a limited content selection without the need for a paid subscription, with the aim to tap into the growing Kenyan streaming market. Netflix emphasized that no action would be required, as memberships on the free plan would be automatically cancelled when it ceases to exist, and the company is encouraging Kenyan subscribers to explore its various premium plans. This decision follows Netflix's previous reduction of subscription prices in Kenya by 37% in response to mounting competition from platforms like Showmax and DSTV. TikTok is currently in the testing phase of a new monthly subscription service designed to eliminate advertisement from its popular video sharing platform. The subscription service, priced at $4.9, is being tried in an undisclosed English-speaking market outside of the United States. The global rollout of this ad-free subscription remains uncertain, and competing platforms like YouTube and X, formerly Twitter, already offer reduced or ad-free experiences for a monthly fee. Meanwhile, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, is considering the introduction of ad-free subscriptions for users in the European Union (EU) in response to EU advertising regulations. And finally, on the morning news update today, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has unveiled a series of new policies in an effort to bolster support for the Conservative Party ahead of the upcoming general election. Among the notable measures is the decision to cancel the northern leg of the HS2 high-speed rail project, a move that Sunak framed as a shift towards change. He argued that the project's cost had soared and the economic case weakened post-COVID, prompting the need for a new direction. The cancellation of the HS2 northern leg, originally intended to connect Birmingham and Manchester, aims to redirect approximately €36 billion into other regional transport projects. Furthermore, Sunak unveiled policies to raise the smoking age incrementally, restrict access to vapes for children, and revamp the education system. It's a wrap on the Morning News Update. Many thanks for watching. I am Blessing AHA. Once again, happy Teachers' Day to all teachers out there. We value your contribution to national development. Good morning.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souk Enlightenment. Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Vivian Oguche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruwoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Sustain that industry. So if government does not have much money, they should find an enabling environment.
Now, what are these issues? The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Glad to know you are still there with us. It's time for news analysis now, where we review all the headlines trending today and provide better perspective for you to understand this news. And as usual, the table is full. I have the wise ones here. Sam Idaoza is here with us. Glad to have you join us this morning. Good morning.
Femi, always a pleasure to be here. Nigerians, good morning.
Yeah, Blessing, good morning too.
Good morning, Femi. You look
Today
good.
is, yeah, as usual.
Yes, and also some, as you know, he always kills it. Let me use that word, but it's always well put together.
You know, we are ambassadors for Souk News.
Okay.
We have to represent.
No, he's going to the House.
That's great.
Yes,
So
to the
it's
National
perfect.
Assembly, so honorable.
Don't worry, you have my vote.
I'm a born teacher.
Honorable in waiting.
It's our day. It's Teachers' Day.
Today is World Teachers Day.
Yes.
Happy Teachers Day.
Yes, Happy Teachers Day to all teachers
If I
out
tell
there.
you I used to be a teacher, will you believe?
I think all of us at some point, if not intentionally, NYC made some of us teachers for a year.
Yeah, exactly. That was what happened to me. I had to teach for like 6 months before I switched gear to my, calling. And it was an interesting experience.
Yes.
And that made me value the impact of what teachers are doing. I want to say Happy Teachers Day to all the teachers out there who are molding life. Some of us are better today. What we are today, has to be through the contribution of teachers who stood by us, who didn't give up on us,
You see, that's why they always say our reward is in heaven, because you can't pay us enough.
Yes, looking at it from that angle, it's comforting, because when you tell some teachers that your reward is there, we seem like, oh, we don't deserve better pay.
But
and
interestingly,
better
some
working
teachers are
conditions.
getting their reward right from here.
No, we can't. You can't pay us enough. Our reward is in heaven. It's only God who can pay us.
Because
All right.
they're actually building lives.
Yes, great. So let's start our analysis with that. Today is World Teachers Day. UNESCO has dedicated a day like this to celebrate teacher. Idaoza, what do you think? Do you think we've celebrated teachers enough the way they ought to be celebrated?
Yeah, I think teachers all over are being celebrated. So many people are doing so much to see how we can actually put value in that profession. And don't forget, recently, very recently, to really give some endorsement to that profession, the immediate past president gave an executive orders to encourage people to become teachers. And he even made a pledge that those who go to study education in the universities and colleges of education were entitled to allowances from government. And this is to tell you how many people put value on teachers. I also remember those days when Damson Shomole was the governor of Edo State, and one of the things that he said he could not take was to see teachers, especially those in the primary school, neglected. And of course, their salary was straight from the line, from the allocation of the state, straight from the federal level. And that one did not reach government table. It's straight to the account of the teachers. And this is telling you how we value these molders and shapers of destinies. And I think more need to be done. They need to be celebrated, even in terms of remuneration. There should be good packages for them to really drive them and see that they are contributing to nation building. Because the quality of your teachers is eventually what will determine the quality and outcome of those who will eventually be the nation builder. So we need to put more kind of respect and regard to that profession. And then, of course, we know, like I said earlier on, the reward of the teacher cannot be paid by any human being. And, of course, it's only God who will be able to really pay the teachers. I look at history, growing up, really seeing how God has really been good to teachers. In my community, those days, in short, it's only in the teacher's house you see light.
That's great. We had to do this just to honor teachers, and let's go to the news analysis proper. We're starting with this big story coming from the corridor of the federal government, in which the is initiating a loan interest loan program of 50,000 naira for 1.5 million market women through the government enterprise and empowerment program. The Ministry of Women Affairs is coming up with an initiative called Yaloja Fund. It's targeted at market women, about 1.5 million market women, and each is expected to get a loan interest of 50,000 naira per person. This reminds me of the days of, there's this special program created for women, Better Life for Rural Women, where it's all about empowerment for women, done by Miriam Babangida then. It was so popular. And so this one is also created to look at the plight of market women in order to empower them, for them to be able to sustain their businesses and for them to be able to earn living. Idahosa, what's your reaction to this?
I think for me, we will be very careful how we're going to drive the process. This process, for me, they could be inflation triggering if we are not very careful. When we are throwing so much money in the society without corresponding supply and demand, and this will create a whole lot of issues that will not augur well for the macroeconomies of the nation. And I think that those who are the seat of government must sit down and articulate what real goal we want to achieve. Now, take for example, you are going to give 50,000 to a market woman to do what? This is a question. If you come to a Idumota, for example, and you want to give somebody 50,000, what will he be buying with 50,000 and selling with 50,000? And I think that there are better ways to actually do this thing together. And I cannot stop but continue to emphasize that what those in power will need to do really is to see how to aggregate this money together and put them in cooperative. I like the concept of the Iyaloja Fund. Now, the Iyalojas should be empowered to constitute a cooperative where these funds will be warehoused. And warehousing this fund, they will be able to determine who gets what, when, and how. And this also has to be based on a market plan. Because if it's a loan and not a grant, which means it has to be repaid. So those who are benefiting, we understand that there's a measure of accountability, because if, for example, you put like 50 million in Lagos market and you're going to give it to like 10 market women, and in the cooperative you have 100 women in that area. Now, the accountability partner will be the person who is going to be the next one. And this will actually help government to put eyes on what is happening. And then the Iyalojas are now have to be the one collateralizing the facility and the loan. In this way, it will be much more productive, so that it will not be like the market women loan that was done in the previous regime without any significant impact. I think for me, yes, the concept is great, the Iyaloja concept, but I think it should be much more organized so that there will be accountability, and this money is not just thrown at people, and if you cannot do so much, and then of course it goes down the drain again, really adding to too much of fund in circulation.
Really, the targets there, they are underprivileged female traders. So when you say 50,000, it's a big deal for them. For someone who engages in a kind of business where you look at the worth and the value of the business, maybe it's just 10,000, 20,000 for a petty trader. So 50,000 naira is a big deal. You understand?
Yeah. What I'm speaking to is that, yes, 50,000 may look a big deal. And that's just maybe a 50 kg of 2 bags of gari for somebody to sell. What this means is that if you're throwing this kind of money to somebody who is that low, chances are that it will not help the trade. They will be taken and seen as grants. So if we want to do something, we should be able to articulate it such a way that it is not good throwing money at people. It's either that you put these women together in cooperative and train them. First and foremost, know what their needs are. Everybody don't need 50,000. Now, once you equalize that kind of a thing, it will become a problem. And I feel what should be done is to assess the need before applying the fund to their need. I may need 30,000. You may need 50,000. Maybe Blessing need 150,000. So we are not in the same trade. So when you're going to say you're going to take 150 across, you know the way these things are implemented, it's going to be cut across market. That's why I'm saying, for example, if you come to this side of Lagos and you are going to implement that kind of a thing, it will be very difficult for you to manage it and be able to pull back the fund. It's not even the figure that I'm looking at. What I'm looking at is the fact that there should be accountability that this thing is a loan and people know that there's going to be a payback. Then the person you are giving the note to, you must also train that person so that he will know how to keep books. And at the end of the day, this facility are not just thrown into the society and then of course you give it to people and say, okay, I have school fees to pay. I quickly use this 50,000 to pay the school fees, and without putting it into the productive venture, which of course the government is interested in. That is the point I'm trying to make.
Well, I think that maybe a collaboration with the microfinance banks would have been better to implement this, because a lot of traders take loans from microfinance bank and they have a way of structuring it based on what you have, based on what you're contributing, and so you can apply for a certain level. So it could have been a buffer to maybe raise the threshold of what traders can have access to. So if it comes through microfinance bank, then it's obvious that it's a loan and the repayment plan are well structured. It's easier to recoup the money back than giving the monies like that. Yes, the answer is right. The repayment is going to be difficult because it's going to be seen a lot as grants. So it may not get back to government, and the possibility of giving other persons or making other traders benefit from the scheme would then be reduced.
All right, let's see how it goes. Let's move on to the next story, which is that of the chairman of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, Alhaji Mohammed Shehu, has stressed the importance of tax compliance in Nigeria to enhance revenue generation for the country. The chairman called on both individuals and entities, including ministry, department, agencies, as well as private businesses, to ensure timely remittances of taxes to the federal government to avoid potential sanctions. You know, the emphasis here is the need for tax compliance and remittance of taxes. You have reports of, you know, taxes that are being collected, they are not being remitted to the right coffers. How do you feel when you hear this kind of report?
Yeah, I think for me, it is known because like we've said over and over, the way our society is structured today is the real problem. It's a real problem. And I think what we really need to do is that those who are the helms of power need to build trust. You see, people must get to the point of understanding that threat does not solve any problem. It does not. You see, we must be able to make a business case for whatever thing that we're talking about. And this is when compliance becomes natural. You see, when people don't see taxation as a necessity, complying will become problem. More so that there's a whole lot of mistrust between the citizens and the government. I love what Fashola used to do when he was the governor of Lagos State. When he put a project in place, he put a little signpost there and said, this is taxpayers' money. So it gives you a motivation that, oh, wow, my money is here. And you can hear Lagosians say, it's our money. Because the government made them feel so. And I think this is very important. It's not just throwing just threats to people out there and say to them, oh, sanction. Sanction has never stopped crime. And this is where you see even people are arguing whether capital punishment is actually productive, because more of capital punishment, more people want to do the crime really. So what we need to do is to begin to build trust within our systems. Let people see that whatever thing that they are contributing to the nation, they can see what it's used for. You see, in the past regime, you see some road, they build it and say Sukuk Fund or Sukuk Fund. Now, it tells you where that money comes from. We want to begin to see projects that are done by the federal government and say, look, this is from the taxpayers' money. All these things will encourage people to see that government is really serious about business, and then people will be ready to volunteer and support government. This is where we are. We need to build a lot of trust, and this is why a lot of people are complaining that if you're saying, no, we don't have revenue, and then, of course, we still see you with a lifestyle that the people cannot really add together, then, of course, compliance will become a real problem. But I think more than that, we should be able to digitize our systems so that every corporation that is registered, for example, we should be able to track and know where they are and what they are doing part-time. And this will make accountability really, really worth the while.
One of the things being done by the present administration is to look at some of the laws and the framework guiding taxes in Nigeria. And the president had to constitute a committee headed by Tunde Oyedele, you know, a tax consultant who has been doing a very good job to see how they can reform. You know, you have situations where people have to pay taxes that are not being recorded. You have the issue of double taxation. And so this committee has been given the mandate to see how they can ensure that they harmonize all the frameworks when it comes to tax collection, all the laws to ensure that there's proper tax compliance. You see, it bothers me when you have a figure stating that less than 40 million Nigerians pay taxes. If you compare that to the population of 200 million, you know, that is to tell you that there's a need to widen the tax net so that at least more people will pay taxes. And what bothers me more is when people, you know, pay taxes with their hard-earned money and then they are not being remitted to the right coffers. You have a situation whereby taxes are deducted from salaries, maybe from the source, and then they are not being remitted. It's criminal, and I think it's something that has to be discouraged. But you see that it's becoming a trend, and for me, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yes, the government too is not comfortable with it, but I think government needs to rejig the tax collection process. Yes, even for corporate organizations, it's even quite easy to get that. They may be delaying remittance, but once the FRS or even the state internal revenue service goes out and puts a mandate or puts a deadline to say taxes collected must be remitted within a certain period, they will comply. But the problem is more with the informal sector. There are so much tax leakages there because of the collection system. You're using a lot of persons to collect tax who are not even in government employ. So how then do you trace what is collected and what is not collected? These are some of the areas that government should begin to look at.
You see, yeah, just like you said, there's no market here where you don't see all those people. The issue is it getting to where it should get to? But again, is to look at the complexity of the processes. How do we really simplify it so that it's simple enough for people to know, and that, of course, it's also not becoming a problem through the state. And this is where we really need to be able to harmonize some of all these issues. A lot of people pay tax. 40 million people is huge. When you look at the environment where we are, how many people are working in government sector? How many people are working in the private sector? And you see there's a whole lot of people who are out there really doing small things, like Blessing has said, that of course you really cannot put them into a pool. But you see those people, they are paying tax on a daily basis. If you go to the corner there where you see Okada people gather, somebody is taking the money from them. If you see where the car are parked, all the motor parks, somebody is collecting some revenue there. But where does this revenue actually get to, or where it ends up, is what the problem really is. And I think that's where the state really needs to be able to sit up and say, how do we mobilize this revenue that it does not go into private coffers, but is going to the coffers to develop. I was talking with somebody some years ago, and he was telling me, you see, all these people that you call motor park managers, and he told me, he said one of them, I think somewhere in Ibadan, he said in a day they rake up to 10, 15 million into their private account from all those collections that are done for them. Now, that should be going into the coffers of the state. This is what it is, and this is why you see they kill themselves daily.
And the money is not being
They
accounted.
kill themselves daily to be able to become the chairman of a motor park, because they are the one earning the money and not the state. Now, if not state at all are so empowered to collect revenue, this is where the government also must look into and see how to dismantle these structures and ensure that those who are, because they really do not provide any service. Government is creating the park, government is tying the road, but an individual, a private individual, is collecting the revenue. So this is where government really need to open its eyes so that people can really have confidence in government. But all these people seems to be operating with a kind of government backing. This is it. So that's why they are larger than life. So all of these non-state actors should be taken away from the system so that we can have clean enough system where people buy tickets and they know that they are paying straight to the government, and the government have the obligation to tar the roads, have the obligation to ensure that the park is conducive enough where people can, the bus stops are maintained. These are what is done everywhere. It's only here you see motor park people collect revenue, and of course this thing don't really go to the government.
All right, let's move on to the next story, which has to do with the House of Reps. The House of Rep has initiated measures to tackle 10 trillion loan borrowed by the federal government from pension funds. That's interesting. A motion was passed by the House directing its Committee on Pensions to investigate the current status of pension fund assets, totaling over 15.5 trillion. It was that this really bothers me. The federal government had to borrow 10 trillion naira loan from pension funds. Why do they have to borrow in the first place from the pension funds? These are money contributed by individuals who are workers who are working daily to ensure that after retirement they have access to these funds to make their retirement better.
I think for me, it's not the rationale for borrowing that the issue, but it's also to be sure that it's actually loan taking, and then of course there are interests that's accruable on that loan. I think that's what is most fundamental and important, that government don't just take that money and use it. Because when you look at the 2004 Pension Act, what it actually says is that some of this money are supposed to be invested in the capital market so that the money can accumulate interest over time to pay up for the gratuity and the pensions of workers. So if federal government borrow from it, it's like an investment that is supposed to yield some interest to those who are going to take it. Now, when you ask, why would federal government borrow money? Federal government has to borrow money to be able to fulfill its obligation. And we have said it over and over here that the collectible revenue from government over the last 4 years, over 90% of it is spent on the service of loan alone. And then 2% will not be able to accommodate for the overhead of government. So government needed money to pay salaries. Government needed money to pay obligations they owe to contractors. Government needed money to build new infrastructures. So government needs plenty of money, and revenue is not equal to expenditure. So that's why they talk about the deficit in budget financing. So this is the challenge. So government need money. And so they borrow from commercial bank, they borrow from CBN, and they are borrowing from everywhere. But the capacity to repay is what is important, and that's what we should speak to. So that when eventually people want to access their fund, there's no stories, like we say in our local parlance. The government is able to live to its word and say, if this tenure is for 2 years or 3 years, then at 3 years they should be able to repay back that loan with capital. And then, of course, they are servicing that debt And that is what is fundamental, and that for me, what is important, because this is the life of the workers. Because after retirement, they must have access to this facility, and then they'll be able to live life after work. This is important, and this is what government really need to do. But of course, again, like, we cannot stop talking about these things. How to begin to build bigger pies of cake so that we will have revenue really coming in. This is the issues that I keep speaking to. So that how do we put money into productive use? I don't see a reason. That's why I was speaking about the market money just now. I don't see a reason why a government who is borrowing to live will be doling out money without thinking of commercializing those facilities. So we must be careful so that we don't get into more trouble as the world get by. I keep going back to Redalio's work, the principles of dealing with the wealth of nations, where he says that there are always in every nation or across the history of the world, 3 big circles, which of course the world had always go around, which is the circle of big debts and capital market circles, the circle of internal order and disorder, and then the circle of external order and disorder. What happens is that once there is a big debt, you start to find internal disorder, and that blows into external disorder. And the only way to cure that cycle is to improve productivity. And the only way you can improve productivity is to invest in education.
Yeah, I think the issue is more with what government is doing with the borrowings. Well, for funds borrowed from pension funds, yes, it accrues a lot of interest for the pensioners who are contributing, but the issue has always been with the repayment plan, because I do not think that government will be the first borrowing from pension funds, because the pension funds banks or the pension funds keepers, they do some tradings with it and it accrues interest. But the worry when it comes to government is the repayment plan. And if government is borrowing yet is giving out loans that looks like grants and there is no sure plan as to how it will be repaid, it will then look like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So more effort should be on how will government repay these loans. And for loans that government is giving, it should be obvious and structured as loans to ensure repayments.
All right. We have to wrap up our analysis now at this moment. And I want to appreciate Dauza for sharing your thoughts with us on this segment.
Oh, my pleasure here. But the next time, let blessing be the in-between us and not at the extreme.
But as long as he's with us, we are one. All right, we'll go on a short break now. When we return, our guest is standing by to start the discussion for today. Stay with us.
Education, as we know it today, has evolved over the years, motivated by the profound impact of teachers throughout history. In ancient times, the learned and wise often assumed the role of teachers by default. Priests and prophets were the earliest recognized educators, with affluent and noble families entrusting their children to them. These revered figures instilled vital skills, including leadership, in their students. But today, it has become a critical profession with more demanding efforts. Teachers' passion for knowledge and commitments to nurturing young minds goes with rigorous training and a continuous quest to improve skills that will best cater to the diverse needs of students. Reflecting on the trajectory of education, going back the ancient times when Confucius hailed as the world's first teacher, He introduced learning to every class irrespective of their financial status. His influence extended beyond the elite as he defied societal norms by teaching anyone willing to learn, thereby establishing a more inclusive educational system. This transformation emphasized not only the dissemination of historical knowledge, but also the development of moral character and social responsibilities in learners. Within the classroom, teachers skillfully maneuver through varying abilities, backgrounds, and learning styles, striving to ensure every student comprehends and excels. They not only impart academic knowledge, but also serve as mentors, counselors, and motivators, shaping character development alongside intellectual progress. Going above and beyond, teachers invest their time and energy to support their students' well-being and aspirations, showcasing a unique commitment to their key role. They remain molders that continuously sharpen every innovative ideas and change around the world. As we celebrate World Teachers' Day, we honor the enduring journey of teaching from the era of Confucius to the modern day. From humble beginnings to the present complex profession, adapting and striving to provide quality education amidst various challenges. In recent times, the global pandemic has further underscored their resilience, pushing them to innovate and utilize technology to ensure uninterrupted learning. On this special day, we express our deepest appreciation for teachers worldwide, recognizing their important role in shaping minds and envisioning a brighter future for us all. Alfreda Ambebasi, Silk News.
Given a directive, what should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
That was a special report on Teachers' Day. You can't rule out the fact that teachers are doing their best, and they will keep doing their best when it comes to nation building. And today is dedicated for teachers. And we'll be looking at the plight of teachers. We'll be looking at the educational sector, curriculum development in Nigeria, which is very critical at this time. And to share a better perspective on this, we are being joined by Olufunke Fasheyi, a visionary educational executive. Olufunke Fasheyi, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange this morning.
Good morning, I'm happy to be here.
Okay, today is World Teachers Day. So let me start by saying Happy Teachers Day to you, Funke.
Thank you very much. Well deserved, I must say.
All right. So let's start our discussion in that light. I would like you to talk about teachers, do you think teachers are being celebrated the way they ought to be celebrated? Today is dedicated for them, but I would like to have your thoughts in that regard. Do you think teachers are being celebrated the way they ought to be celebrated? Let's start with that.
Okay, so I'll take you on how teachers are perceived in the first instance. I never wanted to be a teacher. Both of my parents were teachers. And I just thought that they didn't get the best hand when it came to perception, respect, and, taking a good standing in society. But hey, these are the people that mold the high and mighty. What's wrong? So I think the biggest problem we have in the celebration or acknowledgement of the effort of teachers is in the perception. And it dates back to the very foundations of the education system in Nigeria, where teaching was a come rush, come eat kind of profession. And everybody was invited to come because there was a gap. And I think the government was trying to do a good thing, but at the end, it created accommodation for a lot of non-professional and poorly trained teachers. And that gave birth to the perception that teachers are not the most important people in the country. And I dare to say, without teachers, the nation is really not going anywhere.
Okay, since today is Teachers' Day, let's take a look at primary school education in Nigeria because that is the foundation for the educational system. Curriculum development is very crucial. Can you take us through the process? How is it achieved?
Okay. In the ideal situation, curriculum development is a reflection of the philosophy of the people of that nation. It's also a reflection of the philosophy of the educators and what they want to achieve. The curriculum is developed around many facets, and one important one is where the nation is going, and that's essentially nation building. We're also going to look at the individuals, the state they're in, especially now that's post-COVID, many things have changed. The Gen Zs don't learn the same way the 70s learned. So curriculum development is a potpourri of different things. The process, it starts with that philosophy. You must align with the philosophy. We must align with the philosophy. And over time, philosophies have changed. You mentioned earlier at Confiscus, what the philosophy, and then we have gone on to progressivism, instructivism, essentialism, and even constructivism. There's a lot of principles that back up curriculum development. So after the philosophy has been aligned with properly, then of course you have professionals, principled and well, trained individuals who are going to look at the different areas of the nation, the different areas of the community. What do you want the person to become? What are you trying to imbibe before we now go into taking the nitty-gritty of the subjects and then infusing it with the principles? So curriculum development is a whole big thing when it comes to education. And it's something that has really suffered in Nigeria.
All right. I would like you to give us insight into the structure, the present structure system of curriculum, in primary education, as far as primary education is concerned in Nigeria. Give us an idea of what it looks like at the moment and what it should be for us to be able to understand where we are and where we should be.
Okay. The federal government of Nigeria has done a very good job in putting the curriculum in paper. I have been privy to reading the Nigerian National Curriculum, which is put together by experts in the Federal Ministry of Education. The primary school education, there's been recent updates for the curriculum and what and where it should be taught. But all that is pen on paper. When it comes to the execution of the curriculum, there's a problem. So right now, if you look at the curriculum of Nigeria, it is rich. It is beautifully done. Experts have done it. I'm sure if you look at the names of those who were involved, you will find out that they've studied all around the world. So the curriculum is beautiful. It is what would I use? It is in the delivery that we do have a problem, interpretation and delivery, which piggybacks me back to teacher training. So if you have a teacher who doesn't know what the curriculum stands for, then we've not started anything. So if we piggyback back to teacher training, we have a fantastic curriculum. I usually say to schools who want to call themselves British or American schools, I say you don't really have to. What you need to do is take the Nigerian curriculum and give it excellent delivery, and that curriculum will perform.
All right. In ensuring a good delivery of the curriculum, you've attested that Nigerian curriculum is very beautiful on paper. And you talked about the need for teacher training. What kind of training will be required? Because we still have the teacher training college, we have the universities training teachers. So what kind of training should be needed? Does it mean that that curriculum has to also be in the curriculum that grounds or prepares the teachers?
Definitely. All right, let me give you a scenario and something that miffed me while I was in university. My first degree is in biochemistry. And if anyone in the Faculty of Science was struggling with their grades, they were sent to the Faculty of Education. If anyone wasn't doing well or needed the minimum qualification to come in, they were sent to the Faculty of Education. If you look at the cutoff marks of the UTME right now, I'm sure the Faculty of Education has one of the lowest cutoff marks. So we end up absorbing into the system people or students who are struggling with education, who have not shown their mettle to now go on to train those who are going to become the engineers, the doctors, the other professions, the computer scientists. There's a big problem there. So I think teacher training should be the bedrock of our curriculum. The initial teacher training in Nigeria does not give the teachers the best hand when dealing with curriculum and in primary education for that matter. The foundation is very important. And that was one of the reasons I went into education. I looked at my children and I remember the experiences I had in primary education. I grew up in Nigeria at the time where all of the teachers in my primary school were Ghanaians, and we got the best from them. If you go to Ghana now, it is tough to get into teacher training. If you go to the UK, it is tough to get into teacher training because you must show that you know what you're doing. You're expected to be a little bit above and beyond the average to be a teacher. And that is what teachers do. So when you have a population of teachers who have struggled with their own education and do not know as much as the children right now know, then of course the curriculum delivery is going to have a big problem.
Okay. Earlier, you acknowledged that the Nigerian curriculum is fantastic, looking good on paper. I'm wondering, why do we have that kind of development, and what should be done to ensure that that translates to productivity in reality and not just on paper?
Okay. As you know, Nigeria is such a dynamic and different nation, and the way we do our things, we just try to get to the end product very quickly. So process is not the thing that we like in Nigeria. And the only thing that takes a good process, I dare say, is the emergence of political leaders. And that is because there's a lot of laws and, adjudication that goes with it. It's supposed to be a painstaking process to put together proper teacher training and as the initial teacher training. So there's the initial teacher training that teachers should have, and that usually just puts you in the classroom. There's a lot of professional development that should go.
All right, we just encountered a glitch there while communicating with Fashayi, Olufunke Fashayi, who is a guest talking to us about curriculum development. As soon as that is resolved, you understand internet connection sometimes can be unpredictable and unstable. We'll continue with, on that conversation. But Femi, having a very fine print, having a very good curriculum on paper as attested to by Olufunke Fashayi, but the delivery is a problem. And yet we have often teachers going on training and retraining. Not even mention the private schools where you have large sums of money paid as tuition, but there's a problem. What does that say about the education system in Nigeria?
I'm not always comfortable when we have this impression that anything that has to do with Nigeria has to go the other way. We need to begin to change the narrative. If you have a good curriculum, well designed on paper, it should translate to productivity in the educational sector. And then this boils down to the fact that we don't like ideas. You always have suggestions, you have committees coming together to bring ideas. But when it comes to implementation, it's quite crucial. And this is where we need to begin to change the narrative. It's not just about training the teachers, but setting the standard. This is where supervision comes in. There are various bodies, every private school, every public school, they have bodies or associations that ought to provide that kind of supervisory role, but are they doing their job to ensure that they comply with the standard? If something is stated on paper that should be the order of the day, that should be the standard, that should be the norm, that should be the structure, I also feel that there should be a form of supervision to ensure compliance. For instance, if you're creating a school or you're founding a school, there should be a way that someone will come into that school to see what you're doing, education officers to checkmate what you're doing, to see the activities, to ensure that there's compliance. Another issue is the issue of, funding, because some of them will feel if you need to implement this particular curriculum, it requires, employing more teachers, having more hands. And the challenge with employing more teachers these days. But what I feel is more important is for Ministry of Education to also see what they can do to ensure that schools comply to standard. These days, you even hear different curriculum. You have
different
British,
subjects.
Different British curriculum. You have French, you have
Yes.
American, you have Nigerian, and there should be a standard.
Harmonizing the curriculum.
Exactly.
Because even the curriculum that she talked about that is fine on paper, I was going to ask, is it a curriculum that is a generally adopted curriculum that whether you're in public school, you're in private school, that is the curriculum according to which children or students should be taught? Or it's just for the public schools and for a few private schools that want to adopt it? Because you just mentioned we have the British curriculum, we have the American curriculum, and sometimes it's infused together with Nigerian curriculum, and you just wonder what kind of confusion are the children being brought into. I've seen cases where teachers struggle to teach certain things because they didn't learn those things. And I think that's what Fashayi meant when she was talking about teacher training. All right, the good news is that we have Fashayi back. So we'll continue the conversation with her. Hello, Fashayi. Welcome back.
Hi, how are you? Sorry I lost you then. The internet went off as it is our situation here. I think I lost my train of thoughts, but like I said before, teacher training, continuous professional development, and then, a lot of, if you go through the scholarship boards that we even have around in Nigeria, you don't get to find federal government scholarships sending students abroad to study education, And so it's like we are building a beautiful castle and it's all on sand, leaking sand, quicksand. Because at the end of the day, when you come back to the brass tacks, we are a product of the teachers that we go through. We are products of the schools that we attend. We are products of the philosophy that our nation subscribes to. We are a product of the philosophies that the curriculum aligns with. And, I think that's my position on that. So we can really not do enough until we go back to the policymakers, until we go back to the policies themselves and look at the plan. What's the plan? Is it a 20-50 plan or 60-90 plan? Because we're very good at that. But how is the plan going to be rolled out? What's the manpower that you need to roll out these plans? I'll give you an example. I recently did a study, and I was just reading up on different alignments of curriculum. And in Poland, they majorly aligned with the IB curriculum, which is based on constructivism. The IB curriculum on its own is a commercial curriculum, which you have to pay for. But when a whole country aligns with a certain curriculum, it makes sure that every step of the way, they are doing the same thing, the right way to put the nation forward. And they're able to sit down and assess the curriculum at different levels, at the federal government level, at the state government level, at the municipal, whichever level it is. There's a lot of assessments and improvements, and the assessment feedbacks into the improvement of that curriculum. So our process is quite short because we just, come up with our books and things like that. Very commercialized, I must say. We need to go back and make sure that we're doing the right thing.
All right, you've talked about aligning the curriculum. So let me ask, the schools that we have in Nigeria, do they align their own curriculum? Does it align with the curriculum as designed by the Ministry of Education, which you said is very beautiful. We have different schools these days. We have British, Nigerian International School, American, Nigerian International School. Do they have their own separate curriculums? Harmonizing these curriculums. Let's look at that.
Right now in Nigeria, I think everybody wants to get an international education. In the spirit of JAPA, international education sells. Because if you go abroad and get a degree, let's say from the US, when you come into Nigeria, you automatically get a little bit above your peers that you left behind. That same thing with primary school education. Parents want to put their children ahead of the rest. And I wouldn't fault any parent for wanting an international education. I wouldn't fault any school for adopting an international curriculum. Our curriculum, as good as it is, barely gets reviewed as much as it should. I'll take the example of COVID. By the time we were done with COVID, it was obvious that there was a gap in technology availability, there was a gap in technology skills, and there was a gap in technology itself. The curriculum should address that. You walk into many schools now, and the only technology in the classroom of children right now is the teacher's phone. And that itself creates a problem, even though it can be used to their advantage. So we still have a long way to go when it comes to curriculum. The American, British, any other curriculum is only as good as is reviewed, as the feedback is used to review it, to make sure that it remains relevant. For instance, in many countries, we have some drugs that are already banned. And that's because the reviews have shown that there is a lot of side effects from, well, negative side effects from using these drugs. So the drugs are taken out of the shelf. NAFDAC doesn't allow some drugs to come in. That's the same way our curriculum should be reviewed. We should sit down and look at what we intend to achieve as a nation over short-term plans, medium-term plans, and long-term plans. And when it is reviewed, there should be a report. It should be open. It should be debated. If you look at the UK, when they start debating their education, it's open. Everybody participates, from the local government all the way up. So I think that the nation needs to review that process and align properly with our own curriculum. In different schools right now, it's just confusion sometimes, but some schools do a good job at making sure that they get the best of two worlds. When you're in a school where the teachers are trained and there's infrastructure, technology, aligning curriculums will not be a problem. But if you're in a school or you work in an environment where the teachers don't even have the initial teacher training, they will not be able to even carry their own curriculum, not to talk of merging it with different curricula around the world.
I would like you to talk to us about, maybe in an ideal situation, what should be the determinant, the type of curriculum to be adopted in a particular school? What should influence that, the factors that should determine the pattern or the system of curriculum? These days you hear British curriculum, you hear Nigeria, American. But in an ideal situation, what should determine, the pattern of curriculum in a particular school or in the educational sector?
Okay, I'll start with this. The federal government of Nigeria expects that a school on the soil of Nigeria will be accredited to run the curriculum of the federal government. But that doesn't mean that there's no leeway for those who want to run international curriculum for different reasons. I'll give you an example. You have lots of Indians in the country, and most times they're here for work, which means that after a short time, the children need to go back to India and fit back into their own curriculum. So we have Indian schools. We have Indian language school. You have some French or German language school. We have schools from the Netherlands. And those ones feed to the diplomatic community of their nation. in Nigeria. When a school decides to choose a curriculum, it is based on the philosophy right now of the proprietors of the school. Many times right now, it is just a strategy and selling points. If my school is in the eyebrow places, I need to attract those who are going to go to the UK or US or Canada. So you have things like Nigerian, Canadian, American school or Nigerian, British, American school. Now, what the government does, so the schools, put the names on their billboards and things. But when you go inside the school and you dig into the curriculum, you will find out that many times it's just snippets of here and there from maybe they buy books that are Canadian and then they have 2 subjects that are a little bit American focused. But the best they can do is still run the curriculum of the land. When it comes to other international curriculum, let me talk about the IB, for instance. The IB appreciates the fact that the school is in the country, they'll call it the host country, and allows you to teach the curriculum of the host country following their principles. And I think that's the most important thing. They'll expect you to teach your language, expect you to teach any part of your curriculum using constructivism as a base. So constructivism just means that the children are the one constructing their learning through different experiences. There's a lot of questioning, the teacher is just a facilitator, and really that is how education should be. The teacher is supposed to facilitate. Right now, we don't have the caveat on knowledge anymore. Knowledge is everywhere. Before, only the teacher knew. Now, the teacher doesn't even know half as much as the children who spend more time on their phones and the internet. So I would advise that to choose the curriculum, you must have the manpower also to deliver that curriculum. If you choose to run the British curriculum, your teachers need to be accredited to teach that curriculum, not just by name, which is what many schools do, but in skill and in delivery. Your teachers must be trained. And I think that is how curricula is decided among schools, especially the private schools. Many private schools do have trained teachers. I went through a system that got me trained to teach a particular curriculum. But in many others, or in many more others, it's just about the name, the tag, and the pay.
Okay, looking at the many others, I would want to include public schools in the many others. The inability to effectively deliver the curriculum, does it have anything to do with the fact that our teaching or learning is theoretical, mainly?
Oh, yes, it does. Our teaching and learning is still very theoretical. I'll start giving you an example. So I went to a very good primary school, and most of my teachers were foreign, so it wasn't very theoretical in primary school. Secondary school, for me, was at the time when Nigeria was beginning to pick up in education. Then we had a fantastic Ministry of Education who changed the paradigm. And that was supposed to be the beginning of a big shift with the 6334 system. So the school had a lot of practical activities. We had a lot of subjects to do. It was very wide. You could do quite a bit. You could choose your area of interest when it came to vocation and things. But we still had the theory where at the end of the day, I was going to sit for WAEC. And WAEC requires that I regurgitate everything that I know. Even though right now, if you look at the WAEC questions, they're beginning to shift a little here, a little there. But any child who's not able to regurgitate is not going to make it through that examination body. So the curricula of physics, chemistry, biology requires you to do a lot of practical. But do we have the funding in the public schools to do all those practicals? So we choose the ones that we can afford. Some teachers go above and beyond to even use their own funding to do the practicals. Do we have enough labs to handle those things? Do we have varied labs to handle all the other subjects? that we have in school, or the interests that the students have. Because right now the children are so exposed to various interests around the world, and the thirst, and hunger to be able to harness the interest and know what they are doing, and get to have a say in their future as they go. So I would say that funding is a big problem, and feeding to the theory is something that teachers need to throw out of the window.
All right, it's time for us to take a breather now. And when we return, our conversation with Olufunke will continue. Stay with us.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
You all know that Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. Today we're looking at the educational sector, primary education, to see what can be done better. And we've been speaking with Olufunke Fasheyi, who is a visionary and executive when it comes to education. Olufunke, glad to know you are still there with us.
Thank you.
All right. Now, let's look at the public schools now. We've been talking about the private schools. Now, let's look at the plight of students who are at the public schools. I would like you to talk to us about the nature of curriculum at the public schools, because for the private schools, they can afford to pay for whoever needs their services. But let's look at the public schools. What kind of curriculum is being adopted, and what is the state of that curriculum, and what should be done better to ensure that they can compete with private schools?
Okay. The public school system in many states, when it comes to primary education, it's actually the state government and the local government that have the purview. So over time, in many states, the government and the government of the day has taken responsibility to make sure that things do get better in the schools and that the teachers receive training. I've seen in many states where the teachers are given additional testing. I think that happened in Kaduna State at the time. And, just to improve the quality and the quality of teachers as they come into the system. So they still run the national curriculum stated by the federal government, done by the NERDC. But a lot still needs to be done in the area of professional development, class to teacher ratio, and the infrastructure that is available to the teachers, especially technology.
Thank you very much, Olufunke Fashoye, for your time with us, talking to us about curriculum development in Nigeria's education system. We appreciate your time with us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
All right, in case you just joined us, we'll be looking at primary school education in Nigeria. And we just talked with Olufunke Fashoye, who is a visionary educational executive. She's given great insight into curriculum development. We're going to another break. So after the break, we'll look at some other issues as it affects primary school education in Nigeria. Stay tuned.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade and later under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an Armed Forces Remembrance Cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota markets, souk enlightenment.
The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Did stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for being there. All right, let's take a turn now to quality teacher training, because it is essential for the effectiveness of primary education, because our focus today is on the primary schools in Nigeria. Joining us virtually this morning is Ronke Posh Adeniyi, who is director Le Posh School. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, let's look at teacher training. You know, the importance of having the trainers trained. So for primary school education in Nigeria, what is the minimum requirement for a teacher in Nigeria's primary school?
There should be graduates. I mean, the NCE is acceptable in many schools. However, the recommendation is for teachers to have a first degree in education.
Okay, the NCE, what does it prepare the teacher for?
The basic skills to teach and engage the children in the classroom.
Okay, by that I mean, what is expected delivery from a teacher who has NC in primary school? Are there certain limits to which an NC holder can do that probably someone who's got a beard can do?
In terms of what they deliver in the classroom, that's more of skill. That's more of skill. But I'm talking about content, I'm talking about child development and knowing the science and the art of education. That is when the BED comes into place.
All right, Ronke, glad to have you join us on Earlier Exchange.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation.
All right. So I would like to have your take when it comes to the quality of teachers that we have as far as primary school is concerned in Nigeria. I want you to do a comparison between the public schools and the private schools. Talk to us about the quality and then the quantity of teachers as far as Nigeria is concerned.
Okay. I'll first of all tell you that I'm not a public school teacher. I haven't taught in a public school. I have observed, but I'm not a public school teacher. So what I will be saying will not be out of my personal experience in a public school. I have, however, been in the private sector for over a decade. And when it comes to public school education, we know, in fact, it's not just the public school. When it comes generally to teacher training in Nigeria, we have a lot of challenges with the training, the quality of the training schools that we have. Generally, we can do better. There's private teacher training colleges that exist, I know, in Nigeria, and they are doing a good job. There are ones that are owned by the government, by the states, and they can also do better. There's room for improvement. Now, when it comes to the quality of the education, there's a disparity. We know that a lot of our teachers don't have the facilities that they need to deliver a good job. First of all, the foundation is often shaky when it comes to the training, the knowledge, the know-how to be able to engage the children in the classroom. So that's a problem. Then we have the challenges when it comes to the facilities. So we have heard of many schools that don't have proper boards. They don't have smart boards. They don't have interactive boards. They don't have enough books, libraries. They don't just have the basic facilities for the teacher to be able to deliver. We have classroom sizes as well. Some teachers teach as many as 100 children in the classroom in public schools. It is difficult. It's a difficult teacher-student ratio for any human being to manage. Even if you have 2 children to 80, for example, that's significant. So in the private sector, you have a lot more investment by people who have invested in education, who are still investing in education, investing in the quality of the teachers that they get, and it is challenging. It is one of the most challenging things. And there is no school that is exempt, absolutely no school in Nigeria that is exempt from the challenges that we have when it comes to the quality and the caliber of teachers in the classroom. Private sector schools, we have less, the ratio is less. So we see that there's more engagement in the classroom, the delivery is there, and the students are doing very well as well. This is not to say that children in public school don't do well at all as a result of their teachers. They do, but we can have significantly more if there is more support from the government, if they are paid better salaries, which is another thing that a lot of teachers complain about. So, I mean, the list is endless. I can go on and on.
All right, let's expand that list by looking at availability of teachers. We find that for some subjects, you don't readily find a lot of teachers available, whether in public schools or in private school, particularly science-related subjects. How does that impact on learning, and how can we change that narrative?
We can change it when we start in the teacher training colleges, when we start in the teacher training schools. So now, when I left secondary school in 1996, when I left secondary school in 1996, I had a lot of, all my training was in the UK. I came back to Nigeria and I had to do a training in Nigeria. This was what exposed me to the level of, this was what exposed me to the severity of the issues in the system. I observed how people obtain their qualifications, how many people obtain their qualification, the malpractices that were in the system and things like that. Now, if we begin to address those sort of issues, then we will be able to have better quality teachers. If someone cheats their way through the system and they don't have the content and they don't know the content, either as a first degree level or as a teacher training level, when they come into the classroom, they don't have the content. I've interviewed teachers that can't spell Tuesday, they can't spell photosynthesis, they can't spell metamorphosis. So these teachers have a degree or even a postgraduate degree in education on paper, but they don't actually have it in their brains. So they can't do it. So the answer to your question really is for us to start in the schools, in the tertiary education system, to ensure that that malpractice reduces and that people that come into the educational sector are not people that are given education to study because they were not able to make it in other courses. You know, it's something that they give them. So they are allocated education because they couldn't get into law school, or they couldn't get into medical school, they couldn't become an accountant. Or society also says that when you are unable to get a job, why don't you teach in the meantime? It's something that people don't take seriously. It's a profession that I don't believe is a serious thing. Whereas you have countries like Finland where you have to have a degree and a master's degree, sometimes a postgraduate degree, to be able to engage with the children in the classroom. So the minute we begin to put some dignity on the profession, the minute we begin to train teachers better in the classrooms when they have the tertiary education and their teacher training, then we can equip them, upskill them, upgrade them, and they'll be able to deliver and do a better job for our children in the nation.
I'd like you to talk to us about some of the key components of an effective trainee or programs that will help our teachers to be able to deliver quality education. What kind of training is essential given the present reality and the needs in the educational sector now?
You see, we have to be very thorough in our training. When we're delivering the training, we have to be very thorough. We need skilled trainers to train our teachers. We need very skilled people to equip them with the knowledge. And there are people that are thirsty for this knowledge. They want to know. So people that know how to train, so train the trainer. people that know how to do this. We need this in the classroom, the quality. And then we need also the content to be very robust. We need a lot of strictness when it comes to assessments of the teachers. So when they're doing the micro teaching, when they're doing their written examinations, when they're doing their projects in all those tertiary educations, it should be something that is strict. There should be no malpractice, there should be no bribery, there should be no corruption, there should be nothing that will interfere with the integrity of that teacher. If that teacher can scale through all those processes and come out unscathed, that teacher is going to be able to deliver in the classroom, provided that teacher loves the children and loves to be a teacher.
Okay, let's look at what the teacher is even taught at the teacher training colleges. How do we rewire the curriculum, what they are taught, and the teaching process, so that as they come out, they also know what to do right on, given the consideration or the thought that we're also in a technology age?
You see, the content, I've seen the content when I did a program in K2 here in Lagos many years ago. I've seen the content. I will not really query the content. It's actually quite robust when it comes to the content. To upgrade it, oh yes, we can upgrade it. We can add the technology. We can add new teaching practices, new methodologies. We can upgrade it. But the content in itself is not something that I would put in the bin. I wouldn't say that it's not good enough. It is good enough. The important thing is that, are we allowing them to absorb it? Are the teachers absorbing the content? Do they understand it? Are they going through the system, or is the system going through them? What exactly is happening in those classes? So you would find that someone will graduate and you would ask them basic questions and they're still unable to answer those questions. That is where the challenge lies. It's because they just attend the classrooms, the classes, mark the register, do the test, cheat their way through many times, and then they just show up in the classrooms. So that's the problem. That's where we need to tackle. The curriculum in itself just needs a little bit of upgrading. There are some things that are basic, you know, when it comes to child development and things like that, they are pretty standard. You should know that, and they're in our Nigerian curriculum. Yeah, so let's brush up with the technology. Let's brush up with the global standards. But even if we can even get it right, those basics, if we can get it right, if a teacher even knows how to interact with a preschool child, for example, with a child in year 1 or in year 2, if a teacher knows what to do with a child that has a additional need in the classroom, then we know that we are well on our way. You see, technology is important, but when it comes to the children, it's not all technology first. You must love the child first. You must understand the child first. You must know how to engage the child first. As it has been said many times, that you have to have grace before grades. So when it comes to teaching, a lot of people, including parents, they always assume that it's all about the grades, it's all about international competitions and things like that. But a child does not learn when a child is not loved, because learning is stage dependent. It's important that we love those children and they know that we love them, and then they will do the best that they can.
How do we change the narrative, you know, where we don't have a situation where teaching is becoming all commerce affairs, or just a source of living? How do we begin to change the narrative to ensure that more professionals are in the business and they are handling what they ought to handle?
That's regulatory bodies. They would have to deal with that. As with many careers that many professions that have a low entry level, you would find these things. You would find people that would engage or start a school because they have so many years experience in the classroom, but not as a business owner, or because they think that schools are making it and making a lot of money. It's just regulation. To be honest, as many schools as we have, we still don't have enough schools. Yes, we have a lot of schools, but we don't have enough schools. We still need more schools, but the important thing is that we need good quality schools. And the quality of the school still lies in the caliber of the teachers in the classroom. It still boils down to the class. No matter how beautiful the school is, no matter what the ambience looks like, no matter what the facilities look like, no matter how much they have in terms of technological implementation and tools and gadgets in the school, if you don't have the teachers that know how to use it, if you don't have teachers that know how to engage the children, give them the right tasks to to carry out in this 21st century. You can't help them to think critically. You can't help them to be creative, to collaborate. You know, if you can't help them, then it really is of no use. So we still have to go back to the quality of the teachers, which is what we're talking about this morning.
All right, talking about the quality of the teachers. Are quality teachers expensive? And if they are, could that be the reason why some schools will want to go for less qualified or less quality teachers?
I mean, I always say to myself that if I'm in the classroom, how much is a parent willing to pay me if I'm going to teach your child? I don't think anybody can pay me enough to look after their child. And I say that as in Nigeria, as they say, with my full chest. So we must understand that they do say that our reward is in heaven, but I also add that our reward is also on earth. There should be a decent wage. We have few countries like Finland and some in China, some teachers in China where they are highly paid, where they are paid a reasonable amount of money for them to be decent. People will say that teachers are role models to their pupils in the classroom, to their students. They are not role models if they look like paupers. No student in this 21st century wants to look like a poor teacher with bad shoes and bad breath and stinky body odor, So when it comes to salaries, we can't pay a teacher enough. However, you will get better quality teachers when you pay them well, because you will attract them into the system. A good quality teacher also wants to look after their own family. They want a decent standard of living as well. So it's not something that you make to look like the salary of a glorified house help, which we see in many cases. Even as I speak now, there are teachers that are on 10,000 naira, 15,000 naira. It's even better to be a copper than to be a teacher in many cases. So you wonder what they've been doing in the all along. You have house helps that are on 50,000 naira salaries these days, even more. But then you have teachers on 15K salary. So think about it. What is somebody with 15K that is struggling to get to work? What are they going to be able to do for your child to make your child globally competitive? So these are the sort of factors that we need to think about when we want to pay our teachers.
All right, as a director of a school, I would like you to talk to us about your personal experience in, hiring quality teachers, the challenges associated with getting quality teachers, and how that can be managed in order for you to stay in business.
You see, I recently did an Instagram live video on my page where we talked about this particular topic, and it was really experiential. So I'm glad you asked about my own personal experience. I want to give you something pretty recent. I mean, I've had scenarios where we would have 100 CVs and we cannot even find one teacher. We've had scenarios where we have a teacher come into the classroom and we give them a spelling test and they cannot spell things like Tuesday. You can't spell basic words like Tuesday. We have teachers come into the classroom, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to say. Now, another thing that we have is that we now have a lot of fraud in the system because a lot of people are looking for jobs. And we also have the challenge where a lot of schools are not prepared to give references for the teachers that are moving around, which is a risk to our children in all around Nigeria. So a recent scenario that happened, because this is a new term, teachers move around, teachers get recruited, and we had this so-called teacher that I would just maybe call her Yemisi, for example. Let's say her name is Yemisi. And what we do at La Poche School is that when we have new teachers, we tend to over-recruit. So we have someone that will float around in case it doesn't work out. Now, we've done our 2-week orientation already, and this lady has come into the school. She has the support, there's a support teacher, thankfully. But then I keep telling them that when you come to La Poche School, you will get a job when you leave. But if you leave poorly, you might have some challenges. While she was in the classroom, after just a few days in the classroom, she had started looking for another job because she was unable to cope. And instead of her to address the situation, she was already looking for another job. She called another school. That school happened to know me, and they called me and alerted me to it. I put another teacher in the classroom. I just let her be, just to observe what exactly it is that she wanted to do. So what I'm trying to drive at by this story is to let you know that people are floating around. They're not committed to the job. They just want somewhere where they think they can chill, just relax and have a lazy job. Teaching is not a lazy profession. It's not something where you come and play with children. You are molding lives. It's the foundation of somebody's life. You can make or break a child by the action that you take as a teacher. But you find that even that teacher, when she approached the other school, she had already written, someone that had only spent days here, had already written on her CV that she spent 2 years and even did training during the COVID-19 with La Poche School. How is that even possible? So it didn't align, but people know me in the educational system. So luckily, they have already alerted me. So we have all this sort of stories. So we've come with consultants all around, like Interview and the likes, where we are trying to say, what can we do to make sure that we have a robust database so that the people that are coming into the system are not going to put the children at risk, and they will be able to commit to the children for at the very minimum, for a full academic year. So that is a problem. That's just one of the many challenges that we have in the educational system in Nigeria. I don't know how much time I have, so let me just pause for now.
All right, so what kind of educational policies will address issues like the ones you just raised, where there's fraud in the system and a particular teacher or some teachers are not inefficient? And also, let's also look at the workload of some. You said some teachers are looking for where they can just chill. Now, does the workload of the teacher also impact on the quality of service that they deliver? There are schools where one teacher takes multiple subjects. Yeah, the schools where teachers take multiple subjects, and if it's at primary level, it's not, to be honest, it's not a big deal, especially at primary level. What if you're teaching a child in primary 1, what exactly are you teaching that child in maths and English that a teacher cannot do? Just think about it. We're not asking you to teach languages. We're not asking you to teach Mandarin or Spanish or anything like that. We're not telling you to teach calculus. So as a teacher, there are basic things that you can do. Some schools will have ICT teachers, which is fine. But every teacher, for example, at this stage in their life, must be able to use a computer. Gone are the days when you say you want to type something or you want to create a PowerPoint presentation, you want to use Canva, and then you need an IT instructor to do it for you. Every teacher must be computer literate. You have to come to that level. Now, there's workload. When you come to a school, so for example, the instance that I narrated, the issue with this teacher is that when you come into a school, there's an onboarding system, there's an orientation process. That initial phase is going to be challenging for you because you are not only learning about the culture of the school, you are learning about the processes, how they do things uniquely. What makes them unique in that school, you have to learn it. And it might be challenging. The minute you know how to do it, at least we have teachers here that have spent a lot of years. The minute you know how to do it, then it becomes business as usual. It becomes really easy, and then you can enjoy the rest of it. But you must pay the price at the start. Just like you joining any other job. If you go to the banks and you've been given a project, if you've given a project in sanction, investor, whatever it is, you would have a case to be able to study, to be able to understand what exactly is happening on that project. That initial part is what they run away from. They just want to come into the classroom and just be shabby. There must be order, there must be structure, there must be systems in place that you must follow. So if you're not able to do it, then you're not an effective teacher. You're not willing and not ready to do the job.
I would like you to talk to us. What kind of intervention are you expecting from the government, when I mean government, the federal government, the state government, and Ministry of Education in particular, to address all these challenges for the educational system to be better than what it is now?
I think they need to sit with more stakeholders in the educational sector, more stakeholders that are willing. You know, our system in Nigeria, I have to be careful on air, our system in Nigeria is a bit funny. We need to stick to the people that are ready to tell the truth. People that are ready to say, these are the challenges that we are facing in the classroom. I mean, I'm in touch with people that work in many so-called big schools. I've had a child in many so-called big schools. There are days when there are no teachers in the classroom, irrespective of the caliber of the school. You know, those things happen. So what are we going to do when it comes to teaching them professionalism? So that's also teacher quality and teacher training. When it comes to the nomadic behavior of the teachers, what can we do to ensure that we have a robust database? You know, just like you have a database for criminals and you would know that, oh, this person is not a criminal or a sex offender or something like that. We need to begin to think along those lines to know that this is the solution. We need to ensure that schools do statutory reference processes for their teachers school owners, leaders, stakeholders must ensure that they are willing as well to give references. Because if you don't do these things, you might put another child at risk. Say, for example, there's a story of a school, a very big school, that a male teacher had inappropriate activities with another child in the classroom. What happened to this male teacher? He was sacked. So he left. He was released. He released from his role. Now, he was only released. That's it. This man is free to go to another school and repeat the same action because there have not really been any consequences beyond the fact that he was released. Now, should that person be reported to the police? Should that person be arrested? Should that person be on a sex offenders register where schools can go there, type his name, and find out that this is who he is? Anybody can put any name on their CV, put any school. You know, we have people that will put 5 years at XYZ school. If you call XYZ school, they'll say, I don't know who this person is. And that is even if XYZ school is willing to give you the references. So we need to collaborate, we need to work together. You know, there has to be more unity in the system. You know, all this segregation, all this I'm bigger than you, all this, you know, all this, what's the word again? You know, status that we are trying to hold on to. At the end of the day, we have to be child-centered and know that whatever we do is, and it's a disservice to the children, will put every child at risk.
All right, let's dovetail a little, but still talking about primary school education. How does infrastructure or the state of the infrastructure affect learning?
Now, the state of infrastructure. Now, I can talk about public schools very well in this case because I've seen them. And we see them, you see them on social media, you see them everywhere you go. Now, in fact, a child that does not even have a chair to sit down, a child does not have, so when I did that program in K2 a while ago, there was a time I was about to sit down on a chair and it was not even a pretty chair anyway. And a nail brushed my skin. So this already, I'm worried about tetanus, I'm worried about all sorts of things. Infrastructure is important. The blackboard, the tools that the teacher is going to use to deliver the teaching. I mean, we've seen the viral video of a Ghanaian teacher where he was teaching ICT, and he had to draw the entire framework of the computer to teach the children. If he was able to show them practically, he'll be able to deliver and do better. The children themselves, if they're not too hot, if they're not too hot in the classroom, if they're comfortable in the classroom, as I said earlier, learning is state dependent. If you are in a good position to learn, and you've been given a good, if you're given a conducive environment to learn, then you will be able to do better. But if we don't, then we will struggle. So you'll find also that even in more upmarket schools where we have the air conditioning and things like that, you see that a lot of the children, they do thrive, but at the same time, we have to know that we have to regulate everything that we give to children. Anything that is not managed is subject to abuse. So we must ensure that whatever we're giving to the children, whatever we're providing for them in terms of infrastructure, that it must be enough, it must be conducive. Basics for the public school, basics are the very, very minimum. Let them have a roof over their head. They're not too hot. They have fans in the classroom. They have blackboards. They have somewhere to eat. They have toilets. You know, there are schools that they don't have flushing systems. They don't have water to wash their hands. Think about it. How can they actually have the best? How can they give the best in such environments?
I like the fact that you acknowledge to the truth that, you know, providing technology, you know, requires funding. Now, let's put it this way. What kind of scheme do you think the government can put in place to help the plight of school owners when it comes to funding, you know, access to funding? What kind of scheme do you think government can put in place, and how can private entities come into this space to also help the shortfall when it comes to funding?
I may not be the best person to talk about funding, because I do know that there are grants available to many schools that they actually do utilize already. I also know, and I've read in the papers a while ago, a few years back, where, and the exchange rate, trust me, was not anything like it is now, where a school bought 100 computers for 100 million. This was provided by the government. So who are the people that are managing the money? What is the place of corruption in all of this? Because even if the government makes the funding available, who are the people that are managing it? And is it going to actually filter down to the children when it comes to actually getting the resources and the infrastructure and the tools that they need to learn? So it's a complex one. You would probably need someone that is a financial expert, someone that is from the banks that will know the right ways to ensure that the schools get the infrastructure that they need. But they do need it, and I do know that currently there are some grants that are available for and to schools which they can utilize.
Okay, let's still talking
and we're talking
about
both private
infrastructure and
resources.
public. Let's take a look at security. What role does it play in the educational system, whether enabling it or creating a problem?
Sorry, I didn't catch the top of your question.
Okay, for instance, there are some states in Nigeria, due to insurgency, educational activity have been disrupted, and you have teachers in that location who perhaps have moved. And then there are some other areas in the country where we can say there's relatively peace or security is good, relatively. How does this play out in the educational system?
You see, we need our children to know, to learn, to have knowledge. And when those insurgencies, when we have all those issues and all those challenges in those states, we find that the children are not learning. But we have to also ask that, do the people, the leaders in those areas, do they actually want their children to learn? How are they fighting for the children to learn? Is marriage more important, for example, for the girl child than for the girl child to be educated? Do they actually want those children to be educated? Do they want them to be exposed? Let's talk about that, because that's important. It's one thing providing all the tools and the teachers that they need, and another the protection that they need to learn. But are parents, are leaders willing for their girl child? I'm putting emphasis on the girl child, because in many of those states, you find that the girl child is not really allowed to go to school, even if the opportunity is there. They want her to get married and make babies. So we need to, focus on that. We must continue to ensure that that's the national issue in terms of security. That one is everywhere. Kidnapping in the east, in the north, everywhere, even in the Lagos where I am at the moment. That is happening everywhere. So if we can get security everywhere for everything, I think everybody's going to benefit as a nation, irrespective of the sector that you are in.
All right, you agree with me that it's also important, as much as you're floating a school, it's also important to make money. But I put this to you: how do you draw the line between profit making and an upholding standard of education so that there won't be compromise?
I think that's a matter of integrity. So I believe you're speaking to private school owners in this case. So you will hear stories of people collecting school fees, and they have the very basic minimum in their schools. School business is a business, so people need to understand it, that it is a business and it's there to make profits. It's not a charity. But it's important that every school has the standards. Every school has the values. Every school has their unique selling proposition, which they will list. And as a result, they will be able to put a price on it. Some put a price on it based on the age of the school. You get into the school, there's nothing happening there. So people put a price on things based on whatever metric that they want to. Now, it's important for parents themselves to be able to do the research, to be able to ensure that they don't have the bandwagon effect where they go to schools where they are pretty much abused and overcharged, and then they get the very minimum when it comes to the service offering. So, there's a lot to consider in that. Your question is a really big one. But I must stress that school business is a business, and it's there to make profit. In making profits, you must also ensure that the children in your care get good quality teachers, they have good infrastructure, they have basics like running water, they have power, the children are not in any way compromised. Very important.
All right, we'll continue expanding that question, because you just said too that it's a very big one. There are issues to look at again in your response, but that will be after this break. Just stay tuned.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers, knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Suk Enlightenment.
Environment.
Now, what are these issues? The petrol is still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thank you for saying regards on the early exchange. We're still looking at primary school education in Nigeria, and we're still talking with Ronke Posh and Denny, director of the Posh School, as we talk about quality teacher training, and we'll continue after this break.
It's still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thanks for being there. Yes, we will continue talking with Ronke Posh Adeniyi, director of the Posh School, on quality teacher training and infrastructure and resources as it concerns primary school education in Nigeria. Now, before we went on the break, Ronke was talking about school being a business in spite of the service that it renders. Ronke. Thank you for joining us. All right, let's look at that. Now, before we went to the break, you had made some submissions talking about how school is a business in spite of its offering service, which is education, building lives. All right, let's look at some of the things here. Agreed, school is a business. The owner of the school, I'm talking about private school, has to make some money from the service that they render. But let's look at the profit margin. In the school system these days, we used to have bookshops where parents would go get books for their children for the school session or school year. But these days, we have schools taking over that role where they produce their own books. We also have schools producing the shoes for the students. We have them taking on different roles. But at the end of the day, it results to the cost of education in that school being very expensive. And sometimes when you look at the pay of teachers in that school, you find a great disparity between what the children pay and what the teachers are paid. So where is the balance here? And how do we also ensure that as much as we want to maintain a business, schools do not reduce the access to quality education for a lot of parents?
Okay. When I hear questions like this or comments, I am always very grateful that I'm not only someone that is running a school, I'm also a parent. So I sit on both sides of the divide. Now, in Nigeria, there's a school for everybody. There's a school for absolutely everybody. There are free schools. There are schools for 50 naira a day, 100 naira a day, and there are schools in millions. Everybody needs to choose the school that suits their pocket. Before you join a school, you need to ensure that you ask all the right questions and be sure that in the long term, you are going to be able to afford that school. If a school is charging for shoes, if a school is charging for books, and you don't want that, you would find another school that is not going to charge for that. Nobody puts a gun to anybody's head to join any particular school. So when you make complaints or people make complaints about schools, I keep telling them that it's like shopping for shoes, for example. If there's something that you don't like about the shoes, you move on and you keep searching until you find what you want, instead of complaining, because somebody is going to always have their own service offering, and it's up to you to take it or leave it. The same applies to teachers. So when they say in those schools, the teachers are not earning a lot of money, I don't know how they do their maths. I don't know where they get all that from, because oftentimes a lot of people, they just factor in the gross amount. So they'll say, oh, this school has 100 children and they collect $500,000 a term. So automatically they're so rich, they have millions. They forget that their overheads, salaries is one of the biggest overheads. They forget that they have dues, the government levies, they have rent, they have so many things to pay to run a school. Now, let's go back to those teachers. Those teachers that are supposedly being paid a significant amount of money. Again, when you go to those schools and go for your interview, you have the opportunity to negotiate your salary. If you don't want that salary, you have the option to decline gracefully and move on to a school that will pay you what you believe that you are worth. Nobody forces a teacher to accept any amount of money, and nobody forces any parent to pay any school fees. So if any parent is complaining about anything, they're just complaining for the sake of it. And the reason why I'm always grateful that I'm also a parent, not just speaking as a business owner, I'm grateful that I'm a parent because I've also had to use the services of other schools. Say, for example, I don't have a secondary school. My daughter had to go to a secondary school, and there were things there, practices there that were new to me. Say, for example, in that particular school, they loaned them the books, the school books. They loaned them the books. I had never heard of that. At the end of the term, they collect the books back. But having said that, we still pay for the books. I didn't quite understand it. But in all honesty, that was the list of my own problems. When I looked at the amount, I could afford it. So I stayed there. Now, on the other hand, there was a school that was closer to home. Their joining fee was 2 million. I didn't say school fees. Their joining fees was 2 million. I have just one child and I refused to pay that. I was happy to pay the school fees, but I was not happy to pay the joining fees. So I could not justify it. Now, at the time, my daughter's dad was like, she's the only one, let's pay it. And I was like, I'm not willing to support this move because I don't believe that any school should charge $10,000 in terms of joining fee. It was an option. The school has not forced us to come and pay it. If you can't pay it, you move on. So we moved on. We moved on. So parents must know that if they cannot adhere to whatever a school is saying, they have the option to move on. They even have the option not to join the school, as opposed to coming online or complaining here and there. There will always be choices.
All right, today is World Teachers Day, and the theme for this year is the teachers we need for the education we want. I would like you to talk to us about the quality of teachers that are needed, looking at the present needs and reality in the primary education sector. What specific needs will this teacher address? The kind of teachers that are needed to meet these specific needs, what are those needs, and then the quality of teachers that are needed given the present reality?
That's $1 million question. So the kind of teachers we need teachers that love the profession. We need teachers that love the children. I would never, ever, ever come online and say that we need teachers that are so skilled first. No. Because you need people that love the children. If you love those children, you will fight for them. You will fight for them to have good stationery. You will fight for them to have good infrastructure. You will fight for them to learn. You will fight for them to grow. You will fight for them to spread their wings. You will fight for them. So we actually need people that love education, that love teachers. Now, we need teachers that have gone through the system and have learned, truly educated, not cheating the cheats. No, we don't want those ones. We want teachers that have good command of English, teachers that are creative, teachers that can collaborate and are not intimidated. And this applies to even school leaders. They're not intimidated about what is happening next door. We need teachers that are critical thinkers, that can think properly, to be able to maneuver and dig deep and really, really crunch that curriculum and make sure that they get the very best for those children. We need those sort of teachers. We need teachers that can communicate effectively, because communication is a lifeline in the classroom, it's a lifeline even outside of the classroom. We need teachers that can thoroughly communicate, teachers that can solve problems, all this critical 21st century things that can reason. Those are the kind of teachers that we need in the classroom. We now need teachers that are not hungry. If you're hungry and all your focus is just money, money, money. And now I fight for teachers. I don't want you to earn 20,000. I don't want you to earn 30,000. No, you're not going to give your best. I'm on the side of the teacher. But at the same time, we don't need hungry teachers. Teachers that collect bribes from parents, teachers that will always scream at the children that it's my birthday on Monday, tell your mommy and daddy. We don't need those sort of teachers. We need professionals. We need people that are ready and willing to do the job and give those children the very, very best. That's what we need.
What you said about teachers reminding students of their birthday just cracked me up. But finally, as we wrap up the discussion, what's your take on homeschooling? Some parents have to homeschool their children for one reason or the other.
I mean, if you have to homeschool your child because your child has an additional need, then you have to do what you have to do. If you have to homeschool your child because you cannot afford school fees, then you have to do what you have to do. But if you want to homeschool your child because you want to jump on the bandwagon and act like if you are cooler than people that are going to conventional school, then it's a waste of your time. Because you need to understand that even as a homeschool, there needs to be structure for a child. Children love routine. You need to understand that you still have to make those children competitive. A child that is homeschooling must be able to go out and still be able to talk face-to-face, communicate with another child outside of the classroom. So even when you have homeschooling a child, you have to still give them opportunities to go out to the library, to use facilities outside of the class. Homeschooling is hard. People are thinking it's fashionable to be homeschooling your children. It is the most challenging thing that people can embark on. So people need to think critically. It is good. There's nothing wrong with homeschooling if you know how to do it well. But how many people truly know how to homeschool their children very well? Homeschooling, you wake up on time, you do things. There should be a structure. There should be exploration. You know, there should even be room for the child to do so much more. Do you have the facilities? Do you know how to even teach a child? You think it's just to, you know, that video we saw on social media when the mother was teaching the child, color yellow, say yellow, say yellow. Is that how to teach? You must know how to teach when you want to homeschool. You might need the intervention or the support of other people outside of yourself. You might not be the one that's able to do everything. So if you want to go into homeschool, there are consultants for homeschooling. You need to go and learn how to homeschool. Don't just jump on the bandwagon, which is what I'm seeing a lot in Nigeria these days.
All right, let's look at the curriculum now. What kind of innovation, what kind of, let's say, changes are necessary at this time for primary education in Nigeria to comply with global standard? What kind of innovation or changes are quite essential needed at this time in order for them to comply with international standard?
So we're talking about the teachers now. I'm still talking about the teachers. Hello?
Hello, Ronke, can you hear me?
Are we talking about the teachers? Yes, you said, what do the teachers need to be competitive at global standards? Is that the question?
No, I'm talking about the curriculum now, the structure now, the primary education now.
Okay, please go on.
So what kind of innovation, what kind of changes are needed for the curriculum to be able to comply with international standard and the present realities?
You see, the curriculum, people always think it's just the content. The curriculum itself is an experience. It's an experience that the child is going to have from start to finish whilst they're in your school. So the curriculum is beyond just the content. For the child to be able, for the curriculum to be robust enough, then we need to understand that it is important that we have our own local content in our curriculum. And one thing that a lot of people have been making a lot of noise about is history. The history of Nigeria, for example, history of Africans. A lot of people don't know that history, including myself. I just know what, you know, it's not something that has been thoroughly taught to many of us. So we need to look at the content. We need to know where local content applies. We need to revamp it. You know, we can't be teaching our children to be making reference to typewriter in a business studies class. It should be something like they're talking about in a history class. We need to ensure that we are we've revamped it to the point where they're 21st century 21st century, what's the word? It escapes my mind. To ensure that the content is robust enough for the 21st century. It meets international standards. We need to check that content. We need to make sure that a child that is brought up in a Nigerian school, be it public or private, that child is able to engage with another child in China and the child is not intimidated. So when I say it's an experience, it's not just the content. We're talking about the confidence of the child, the self-esteem of the child, the ability for that child to be able to get up and do, to research. So there's a lot more than English and maths when it comes to the curriculum. So let's look at local content, let's look at upgrading the content, and let's just begin to know that we need to teach the children it's significantly more than those basics that we teach them. That our children, even in primary school, they can start businesses, things like that. Those are the sort of things that we need to begin. But if a teacher is even struggling on 15,000, how is that teacher going to help a child in the classroom that is 8 years old or 9 years old, 10 years old, like my child was when she started her own first business? How is he going to help a child like my child was when she was 15 and she had authored a book and she had been invited by the presidential candidate to do certain things in his leadership program? We need to ensure that our children are able to. It's the curriculum that helps. And parents need to know as well and understand the curriculum, because a lot of parents will delegate the total responsibility of raising their child when it comes to education to the schools. But when you want the best, you have to know that there must be teacher, parent, school collaboration when it comes to that curriculum to be able to bring out the very best in that child and to be able to compete at international standards.
Well, thank you very much, Ronke Posh Adeniyi, the director of the Posh School, for your time with us this morning. You've been very wonderful. Your contributions are of so much quality, and we thank you for that. Happy Teachers' Day to you once again.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. All right, Ronke's last line of submissions talking about parents being involved in the curriculum takes us to the next discussion after this break.
I've seen that companies that do well, they are correlated to the kind of leader that they have. What it is about is what I've observed working with leaders over the experience of my career. I've seen two types of leaders. The first type is leading out of fear. And this type of leader is not even manifest in their physical appearance. Leading out of fear, you see those leaders, they appear macho, they seem as if they know what they're doing, shouting here and there. But those externalities conceal a very deep fear of vulnerability. The other type of leader is those that lead out of courage. And those that lead out of courage, it may not show on their men, they don't appear macho, they are not screaming here and there, they're calm. But beneath that calm is a solid rigor of logic, solid empathy, and solid personality of being their true authentic self. If we look at their attitude towards delivery, a leader who is leading out of fear, his mantra is because of. If he's not able to deliver, he gives you an excuse. So take someone like a stockbroker who has a portfolio. When the portfolio is doing well, he takes all the credit. When the portfolio is not doing so well, it's doing poorly, he starts blaming anybody else because of, explaining his failure away. The leader leading out of courage, his attitude towards delivery is a language of in spite of. I'll deliver it in spite of the election, in spite of COVID, in spite of inflation. And that is his attitude. Let us look at these two leaders in their attitude towards accountability. The leader that leads out of fear is externally focused in accountability. He never believes it's him. Oh, is this my staff? Oh, is this my colleague? Always blame someone. A leader leading out of courage, his attitude towards accountability is internally focused. Take responsibility where I've dropped the ball. Protect my team. I can go back and deal with the team, but I'll never bring anybody out and say, it is him. And that is the leader that people like to follow. I've seen that companies that do well, they are correlated to the kind of leader that they have. Companies that have leaders leading out of courage exceed expectation. And companies that have leaders leading out of fear always explain non-performance.
It's still imported because local refineries are not working.
Does it stop at giving a directive? What should be done to ensure that this is done?
One of the factors being identified by our key persons is the issue of transportation. For you to have a sustainable city, you must have a deliberate attempt to have a master plan.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
It's still early exchange, and like I always say, the conversation is getting bigger and it's getting better because we are going to speak with another guest. Our guest as well, we'll be speaking with Stephen Imobio, the founder of African Indigenous Language Film Festival. He's going to share more insight when it comes to primary education in Nigeria, the role of parents, the role of community. We want to look at parents and communal engagement when it comes to promoting, primary education in Nigeria. Stephen Imobio, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange this morning. All right, if you can hear me well. Okay, great. Glad to have you join us on Early Exchange. It's always a pleasure having you. All right, we've been looking at primary education in Nigeria. I'd like you to talk to us. What should be the role of parents and the community when it comes to facilitating the growth and development of primary education in Nigeria? Okay, Stephen, I hope you can hear me. I guess you might need to unmute your device. Okay, we're struggling with connection.
There's a challenge with Stephen's audio. We hope he's able to fix that so we can continue discussing with him. But let's look at parental engagement in education. We live in a time where parents are very busy and they need to make ends meet. Some parents have to do more than one job and they're out of the house almost all day. They barely have time for engagement. But we still have some mothers, yes, I know, that is no offense, but we still have, okay, let's just say we have a lot of parents still help with homework. And then when there are parent-teachers meeting, parent-teachers association meeting, what should that be all about parental engagement in
fact, let me
education?
tell you from my personal experience. When I was in primary school, you know, primary one, I think at that point, given some factors, because I attended a public school, I had an experience where I was struggling with some subjects. Interestingly, my dad, you know, was a genius when it comes to, you know, that kind of subject. So for me, one of the things that helped me skate through that phase was the help I got from my dad and from my mom. They became my teachers, apart from going to school, and the teachers were able to do their own part. What my parents did also helped me to be able to maneuver that phase. So you can't rule out the role of parents or parenting when it comes to primary education, because at that level, you know, the learning, the education starts from home. Whatever you're being taught in school, by the time you get home, it's important for your parents to be able to supervise, to even ensure that what you're being taught, you're getting, you know, value from it. I understand now when in a time where everybody is busy, especially if you live like a place like Lagos, Port Harcourt, where you're busy, traffic, you leave home very early in the morning and then before you return very late in the night. But it's also important to balance this. As much as you want to make money to be able to sponsor your kids, you want to make money to be able to give them good life, it's also important to ensure that you strike a balance, because these are necessities. You must understand that it's something that is required for you to do as a parent, to ensure that, to see how far your children are going when it comes to their education. Not just asking questions, but you sit with them, you know, to get feedback on what they've been taught, to see how much progress they've made, and for you to create a framework. In fact, if possible, be another teacher for them at home, create timetable for them, check their notes. You know, there are instances where your child is expected to, you know, write their notes, and then maybe for one reason or the other, they've not been able to do that. Somehow, you even read with them. You create a club, like a family club, where you have the father and the mother and then the siblings sitting together, you know, reading these things together, because somehow it creates a sense of belonging. It's obligatory for parents to understand that irrespective of your obligation, your busy schedule, your appointments or your busy schedule, it's important for you to spend time with your kids, to know how much they are faring and provide that support, not just financial support. You provide the moral support and everything needed for that child to be better.
All right. We do have Stephen Imobi back. So, Stephen, welcome back.
Thank you. We have some technical issues, yes.
We're glad that has been resolved. All right, let's look at parental and community engagement in education. Now, apart from parents helping with homework or going over to attend parent-students association meetings, in what other way can they be actively engaged in the education of their children?
Well, let me greet us. Happy Teachers Day. They are very special in our lives. No matter who you become later in the society, a teacher has to play the role or the other. So it's a special day for them, and every teacher around the world, I wish them a happy Teachers' Day. Now, coming to your question, there are several ways the parents can involve themselves in the day-to-day activity of the children's schoolwork, especially paying special attention to the primary school. That is where it all starts. It's no matter where you send your children to tomorrow for their secondary or university education, if the primary school is not properly taken care of, you might just be building on a faulty foundation. That is why it's good for us as parents to pay special attention to our children, especially their primary education, which is basic according to the Universal Basic Education Dictate. The question first is, you have to use some parameters to gauge your level of involvement in your child's education. For instance, when last did you attend the PTA meeting where the progress of the children in school is being discussed? Incidentally, I'm the chairman of my children's school PTA, those in secondary school. And I know my involvement, how that has actually even turned the school around. So it's important for us. You don't need to be the PTA chairman to know your children's teacher. On Teacher Appreciation Day, do you go? Do you appreciate the teachers? Even if you are not, even if not with money, but just thanking them. I think that will go a long way to be like a moral booster for them. Because those of us with 2, 3 children, even those with 1 at home, taking care of those children, grooming them, teaching them, and trying to put them right, we know what we go through. Not talk of a teacher that have an average of about 12, 15, 20 children that they have to take care of for the better time of the day. Because during school hours, during when there's no holiday, you realize that the teachers spend more time with our children than ourselves. You leave for work in the morning, you return in the evening. By the time you spend some 3, 4 hours with them, the children are ready to go to bed. But the teacher will spend an average of 6 hours with the children, if not more, on a daily basis. So what I'm advocating for parents is that you must know your children's teachers. You must relate with them as to the progress, because it's a joint effort. It's not what you expect the teachers to do all by himself or by herself. You have your role to play as a parent. The teachers have their role to play. But it's a symbiotic relationship within the home and the school. So the home complements the school. In similar vein, the school complements the home front. So there needs to be that continuous interaction, especially with the teacher, as to know the progress. If there are challenges your son or your daughter is having, the teacher must know. And whatever also is happening in school, they should also relate to the parents.
Now let's look at the state of
we
primary
can
schools.
Make our own contribution.
All right, great. Great. All right, let's look at the state of primary schools in Nigeria, most importantly, the public schools. You know, if you look at the state of infrastructure, the state of amenities, they are nothing to write home about. Now, do you think parents should get involved in these, communities should get involved in this as a way of, you know, intervention, apart from what government will do, parents getting involved to provide assistance, maybe in form of financial assistance, in order to be able to cover this shortfall? Do you think it's necessary?
It is very, very necessary. All hands must be on deck. For those of us who have our children in private school, who can afford to put them there, some of us cannot even afford really, but we just have to do everything humanly possible to make sure they go to that, because if we have a better alternative with the public school, of course, we'll be glad to do that. But then, those who have their children and wards in the public school, I think it's also good for them to come together, put little resources together, because even in private school, for instance, I think for last term, the last 2 terms, our PTA levy, we invested it in making the library an e-library, so that the children, our children, can get into the library that is fully internet ready and access any library, attach it to some other, link it to some other library around the world, so that if by tomorrow they meet with those people who are in the first world, they won't feel inferior, because what they know, they too know. What they are learning too. So in similar vein, parents can come together in public school, put funds together, and face that. This term, what I'm doing in our own listing as a PTA chairman, I'm saying our levy, we are putting it into the sick bay. We are using it for the sick bay to make the health facilities. So because some of these private schools, you realize that it's even parents also that are, because apart from what you pay as school fee, you also put some resources together to make the place convenient and make it conducive for teaching as well as for learning. So I think those who have their children and wards in public schools, they can come together and do the same thing. The problem is that the level of involvement in this school work by those who have their children in private school, I don't know, maybe because they pay some money. Those in secondary school, I'm sorry to say, most of the parents, not all, are lackadaisical. Some, apart from taking their children for admission there, they never return to that school until the day the child is finishing from the school. And I think that is a no-no. Once the teachers know that the parents will always come around, they will also sit up. They will also sit up to say, oh, these people their parents can come in at any point in time, and they are also aware that somebody is watching them, watching the growth, watching the upkeep of their children. But like I said in my earlier comment, a lot of parents are not, pardon me to use the word, as responsible. Every school each of my 4 children has attended or are still attending have been there, whether within Lagos or outside of Lagos. I create time, not because I have the time, but if you run around, you're making money as a parent, and you don't have that time to visit your children's school, to know how your children is doing, then what's the essence of making the money? Because there's a place of money and there's a place of physical involvement in this whole thing. So as parents, I think we need to be more responsible. On PTA days, most times on Saturday mornings, you can't say, oh, that's your day of rest, then you have to sleep till like 10, 12, when you should be in the PTA meeting maybe by 8 or 9. It's something you can do, you attend and you come back. Your contribution will go a long way in the life of those children.
All right, let's look at literacy rate. How does literacy rate of the parents or community members impact their engagement or involvement in the educational system?
Well, I think that is that point, if you say, for me, it's arguably, because some of the big, the eggheads, as it were today, the big people in the society, some were legal luminaries, some were medical doctors, engineers. Most of them came from a home where their parents is uneducated, where they cannot read and write. But when the will is there to do the right thing, maybe people say, oh, they don't have much distractions with internet and all those things. But they have. So I remember reading about an article several years ago, how Gani Fawayimi, the late legal luminary, I will have to go and hug Akamu or Ugi, like the Yorubas call it, before going to school in the morning. A lot of them, they go help assist their parents, go to stream, come back, and before walking some distance. But are we inculcating those values in our children? One of the biggest problems I found out today from parents is that They will tell you, I suffer during my time. My children will not suffer. And what they call suffer is actually, what they call suffer is a form of training, so to speak. Today, our children are not trained. They don't have any form of resistance. My son was telling me that in their school, one of the university in the Southwest, a public school, anyway, that 2 of their students during last semester committed suicide. And I was shocked. I asked why. He said they failed. They had like, some of them have like 7 carryovers. And they were like, how are we going to face our parents? How am I going to? And they think the only way out now is just to commit suicide. And what I realized is that, you know, when you don't allow these children to face some challenges in life, you want to solve every problem they have for them. I think that's where the problem comes from, because they've never known to solve any problem. So if they cannot do anything about a given situation or challenge, they think the best way out is just to bow out. Maybe they commit suicide, which is not the way out. And I told him, I said, if you cannot go to school, you are interested in something, you can learn a trade. Please, I know he is bright, but if I were the parent, I don't pray, of those children that are not doing too well, don't make them feel without that they cannot survive. Some of them, the parents are the problem. The courses they are studying is what the parents want, not actually what they want. So at the end of the day, once the interest is not there, the love is not there, perhaps the talent is not also there. In fact, interest is everything. They will not reach to such an extent that they will even pass. So let's allow some certain things. Life is all about vicissitude, the ups and downs. We went through it. It made us stronger. It made us, most of us who we are today, our children, we are not allowing them to face any challenge. I live in Omole Estate. One of my children attend a school just across the estate. And I was shocked when the principal was telling me that they have school bus. I said, how can from Omole going outside the gate, then you cross the road and go to school? Why will you? I say, most of their students who live there, they take school bus. So that's where it starts from. Why will you allow your child? You don't want them to face anything, everything, let it be life of comfort. So the day they are faced with any form of discomfort, they give up. So I think the onus rests on us as parents to actually train this child. I went to school. My parents never attended, I was in Lagos, born and bred in Lagos. I had my secondary education in Saple. Not for once did any of my parents came there. I was left then, I left Lagos. My mom sent me off to the bus park nearby then. Put me in the bus, and I find my way. A 13, 14 years old boy going from Lagos to then Bender State. Today, most of us will never allow our children to, they'll say, things were different. The things were as bad then. That's the truth. Things were as bad then. In 10 years' time, people will say, they will refer to this time that we are saying this stuff as, that was a good old days.
All right.
So that's the normal rhetorics.
All right, this is how much time will permit us to take on this segment. And Stephen Mobie, we must appreciate you for spending time with us on Early Exchange. Your submissions are quite brilliant, and we want to appreciate you for, spending time with us. And we hope to have you on another time, on another segment. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you.
Amen, and you too. All right, let's see. We've been talking about primary education in Nigeria. UNESCO provides that when it comes to budgetary allocation, that it should be between 15 to 25%. And as we speak, Nigeria is doing less than that.
Yes.
That's going to be another, call to action for the next administration to see what can be done to improve the budgetary allocation to education in Nigeria. The motion, the gear will be set in motion to prepare for 2024 budget.
Yes.
And I hope that will be done so that at least the educational system in Nigeria could be better than what it is now.
Yes, because education in Nigeria needs more funding, particularly at the primary level. The focus a lot of times is on tertiary education, but we forget that the basis, which is primary education, has to be given attention. If the foundation is shaky or is not strong, then by the time they get to secondary and tertiary level, it becomes more and more obvious and it becomes a problem. That's been the show today. Thank you for your time with us. I am Blessing Aichi. Business Insight comes up at 10 o'clock. Femi.
And I want to say Happy Teachers Day to all teachers out there. We'll still celebrate you and we'll continue to celebrate you. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.